King is a title that two characters have taken in the Tekken series. Even though there have been two characters who have taken the name, each is simply just known as King in their respective appearances, though sometimes a numerical value can be given to them to separate them as different characters.
Both King 1 and King 2 are luchadors from Mexico who support orphans across the world. In the games, they are never seen without their Jaguar masks, except only on one occasion. There has been a King in every game in the Tekken series, and this, along with their unique appearance and trademark point, has made them into one of the most recognizable characters, not only in the series, but also in the entire fighting game genre.
King used to be a street-brawling orphan with no care in the world except for fighting. In one of his fights, King was grievously wounded and collapsed in front of a monastery. The Marquez priests took him in, saving him from death. After recovering, King realized the error of his ways and resolved to start a new life. He became a Catholic priest and renounced his old fighting ways. He then became a man with a mission, dreamed of building an orphanage for street children, hoping to save them from becoming the kind of fighter that he used to be. He was successful in building an orphanage, but the funds were tight, so to bring in income to the orphanage, King fought in wrestling matches, donning his now iconic Jaguar mask to conceal his identity and acquiring the title Beast Priest. It was at this time that King came to the attention of his future rival Armor King, who was one of a wrestling tag team who also wore Jaguar masks.
As King continues fighting to fund the orphanage, he comes across the King of Iron Fist tournament, a martial arts tournament with a large cash prize. Seizing the opportunity, King enters this tournament. When Armor King comes across the tournament and sees his rival participating, he of course enters too, keen to better his rival. The two meet in the tournament, and King emerges victorious, while Armor King sustains a serious eye injury and is forced to withdraw. King went on to claim third place in the tournament in canon, securing enough prize money to fund running the orphanage. King and Armor King would go on to put their differences aside, and the two became friends and sparring partners. As time passed, however, the orphanage began to struggle. King turned to drink, and the death of a child in his care pushed him to the breaking point. He took to the streets, stumbling around in a drunken stupor. Armor King, worried for his friend, sought him out and helped him get his life back on track, and persuaded him to resume training for a second King of Iron Fist tournament. With the help of his friend, King fully recovered from his depression and alcoholism and trained intensively for the tournament, with the intention of winning the prize money to fund the orphanage. However, King lost in the tournament and resorted to teaching the orphans his fighting skills instead as a means of self-defense.
Sometime after the second tournament, King was attacked and killed by Ogre, the god of fighting. This led one of the orphans in his care to don the Jaguar mask himself and take on the title of King 2, in order to provide further funding for the orphanage and continue the first King's legacy.
In terms of personality, despite his fearsome reputation and appearance in the wrestling ring, King is actually very kind and considerate as an individual, with his own troubled childhood leading him to dedicate himself to helping disadvantaged children, to prevent them from going through the same issues that he faced. The fact that he would go on to become his one-time rival's friend also suggests that he has a positive outlook favoring peace and friendship over holding grudges. King is also revealed to be a sensitive and soft-hearted man, something which can be seen as an exploitable weak spot by his opponents. It is also this that led him to drink in an attempt to drown out what he saw as his failure to protect those in his care.
Aside from the brief shot in the Tekken intro movie, King's face is always hidden behind his trademark Jaguar mask, so his eye and hair colour is unknown. As a wrestler, King is very muscular and at over 6 feet tall, he towers over most of the other playable characters in the series. When his upper body is exposed, King is revealed to have dark tanned skin, and probably dark brown eyes and dark hair as well if he's a Mexican, but not stereotyping at all.
In terms of outfits, King has two styles of outfit. The first is his wrestling outfit, where he wears trunks over his wrestling tights and wears boots, gloves, and knee and elbow pads, and obviously his Jaguar mask. His second outfit is casual wear, which consists of pants with suspenders, a shirt and with a tie and shoes, although he still retains his fighting gloves, and again, he still retains his Jaguar mask.
So in the story of the first Tekken, there's two versions. Version 1 is King, the friendly rival of Armor King, was in need of money to fund the orphanage that he was taking care of. So with the little money he had, he decided to enter the King of Iron Fist tournament in the hopes of winning the prize money. He entered the tournament where he accidentally damaged Armor King's eye during their fight. King emerged victorious, managing to secure 3rd place, winning enough prize money for the orphanage. In version 2, ordinarily he's the kind-hearted man who looks after orphans, but once he puts on his masked disguise, he transforms into the unstoppable masked wrestler. In his past, King 2 was once an orphan who was rescued by a charitable person. He has joined the tournament to earn money for the orphanage which he sponsors. There's actually a 3rd version in one of the original game manuals as well, which is King helps orphans by managing an orphanage with money he earns from pro wrestling. Unfortunately, the orphanage is running out of money and King has turned to heavy drinking. He decided to participate in the tournament to regain the children's hearts and to put his life together. The ending description is a church. King watches as the clock atop the church tower strikes 12. The bells in the tower start to ring and the children of the orphanage run out to greet him. As the children jump excitedly around him, King raises his arms triumphantly.
So on to Tekken 2. After winning, and then this is version 1, because again there's multiple versions.
These after are from the manuals, by the way, too. So this is like the character descriptions.
After winning 3rd place in the first tournament, an orphan died within King's care. Depressed and enraged, King threw away his jaguar mask and ran away. Armor King worried about his rival and went in search of him. After a long and tiring day of searching and finding no clues as to where King may be, he did eventually find him in an alleyway behind a bar. Armor King saw how his friend's life had crumbled and convinced him to return to the orphanage in order to take care of the kids who were still in need of him. Armor King also convinced him to resume his training, ready for the King of Iron Fist tournament number 2. And in version 2, King is a veteran wrestler. Armor King approached King, who had become preoccupied by booze and bars, one day and gave him a flyer to an upcoming martial arts tournament. For the trust of the children and for the respect he had once had for himself, King decided to participate in the tournament. And finally, the ending description, titled as Children. In the dark early hours of Christmas Day, King stands outside in the snow, watching through a window as children in an orphanage building celebrate Christmas with an orphanage worker. Shamed by his loss in the tournament, King shakes his head and walks away, leaving behind a pile of presents that he had gathered for the children. The children King had been watching then run from the building and run over to greet him anyway. As the children jump joyously around him, King raises his head in happiness. And King briefly appeared in Tekken the motion picture. King is seen in a minor scene standing among other fighters.
Yeah, so the gameplay of King, contrary to a lot of expectations, King actually rewards a more defensive approach, as he has a short reach and few moves which allow him to close the space between an opponent. While he does have some ranged moves such as his lariat and an exploder, they're very unsafe and have slow startup and recovery times. When engaged in close quarters combat, King does excel. He has some powerful strikes and follow-ups, and he has 5-10 hit combos which follow the same general pattern, making it difficult for opponents to anticipate and counter them. As a wrestler, King has the largest and most powerful arsenal of throws in the game, and is one of the very few fighters to utilize chain throws. Some, such as the Boston Crab, have simple inputs and are in chains of only 2 moves, while others have multiple complex inputs which can chain into up to 5 hits, dealing enough damage to KO an opponent from full health. These chains can, however, be broken with the correct button input, so are a risky strategy against experienced players. While King is not a beginner-friendly character, he is a character well worth taking the time to learn, as his devastating throws and punishes make him a formidable opponent, able to deal significant damage on reckless or unwary foes.
Yep, so as we said before, in terms of fighting style, King and Armor King both fight using pro wrestling. However, King uses the catch variation, focusing more on holds and submissions, whereas Armor King uses the shoot variation, which focuses a little bit more on strikes.
That's cool. So some of the character relationships he's got is Armor King, which is his friend and rival. There's King 2, obviously, which we'll get to in a bit, which is his successor. And there's Ogre/Ancient Ogre, who killed King prior to the events of the 3rd game or tournament.
So in terms of trivia as well, King does not speak, but he instead growls like a jaguar. King was inspired by the legendary Japanese pro wrestler Satoru Sayama, better known as Tiger Mask, and a Mexican wrestler named Fray Tormenta, a Catholic priest who became a masked wrestler in order to support an orphanage in real life.
That's so cool. And by the way, Tiger Mask, I'm pretty sure I think he's still going, or there's a new one that's wearing the Tiger Mask, but it's like a legendary New Japan Pro Wrestling wrestler, basically. He's always at all the big events still. Yeah, not surprisingly, King then also shares moves with other fighting game wrestlers such as the Giant Swing, also used by Wolf, Hawkfield, the Virtual Fighter, Base Armstrong, Dead or Alive, and Antonio Cesaro, or Cesaro in WWE, and then Armika in Street Fighter V. King's grapples and strikes come from various famous wrestlers, so this can include Undertaker and Kane's Tombstone Piledriver, Kinney Kuman's Kinniku Buster, Jake the Snake's Roberts DDT, Sting and Bret Hart's Scorpion Deathlock / Sharpshooter, and the Iron Shake's Camel Clutch.
His basic pro wrestling grapples include the Atomic Drop, the Frankensteiner, the Wrist Lock, Knee Cross Lock, Choke Slam, Power Bomb, Suplex, Back Slam, STF, Boston Crab, Russian Leg Sweep, Giant Swing, and the German Suplex. King was reportedly 47 at the time of his death, and King is also the first and only character with a known religion, in his case Catholic. However, Miguel eventually is also implied to be Catholic.
Yeah, so some trivia from the first game. King's sub-boss is Armor King. In his ending, he was seen wearing his Player 2 outfit while being surrounded by children from the orphanage, which was obviously the casual outfit. The children in his ending are actually real rather than animated, making his the only ending in the game to feature real-life footage.
That's really
Tekken is the only game to have ever shown King's full face. It can be seen during the console intro on the PS1 before he puts on the mask, and also in the intro, King seems to have a cape made of a jaguar hide, but is never seen in game as part of his costume.
In Tekken 2, King's sub-boss is once again Armor King. In the console opening, King is not seen wearing a jaguar mask. Instead, Armor King throws him the mask after finding him drunk in an alleyway. King's face is not seen, however, staying hidden from view in the scene. And in his ending, King is seen wearing a brown trench coat over his Player 2 outfit while standing in the snow watching the children from the orphanage. Once again, King's ending uses footage of actual children rather than using animated children.
It's really cool. Alright, so on to King 2. So the second King was a street urchin who was brought up in the first King's orphanage. Until the age of 24, this person had worked hard with King until one day news broke of the first King's death at the hands of Ogre. Seeing that the orphanage would crumble into ruin, and the money gained from King's wrestling matches was the only funding it was receiving, the man donned the mask of King and imitated his style. Unfortunately, he had only seen King's wrestling moves as a child, and he had lost every competition he entered. One day, however, another man with a mask visited the new King, introducing himself as an old friend. This man revealed himself to be Armor King, who was interested in finding out if the rumors of a new King were true. For 4 years, the two of them trained, and the new King learned quickly, maturing into a forceful wrestler with extreme power known as King 2. By this time, the now 28-year-old wrestler was a worthy heir to the throne.
And again, in terms of personality and appearance, King is a tall, muscular Mexican with black hair and light brown skin, as we said before. He has long hair in the fourth game that can be seen on his shoulders coming from beneath his mask, and the same outfit / appearance in the Namco vs. Capcom, the first installment of the Project X series. So his appearance is very similar to the original King, but slightly different to nod to the fact that it's a different person.
Yeah, and so in the manual for Tekken 3, the character reference, or the character description is King is a young man who was raised in the original King's orphanage. After being savagely attacked by Ogre, his mentor's dying wish was for King to take over the orphanage. He now fights as a pro wrestler to support the orphanage. Version 2, heir to the throne. He's really King II. Raised in King's orphanage, he was 24 years old when the original King was killed. He put on the mask and assumed the role of King's successor in order to honour his mentor and save the orphanage. The new King had only watched his mentor and really was incapable of fulfilling the legend. Armor King, knowing who killed King, felt an obligation to prepare King II for a rightful revenge. 4 years passed and the King II is now a skillful wrestler. Feeling the time is right, Armor King tells his student that the god of fighting was responsible for King's death. Armor King breaks down in tears as he tells the gruesome story. King II now knows his purpose in life. And version 3, after the first King was attacked and killed by Ogre, Armor King, out of respect for his friend, trained a new King. This new King was an orphan under King's eye. After hearing news of the King of Iron Fist Tournament 3, the newly christened King 2 was entered into the tournament by his mentor to see how well his training would pay off against the toughest of competitors worldwide. King also sought revenge against the elusive Ogre. And in the ending description, King 2 faces off against another luchador with his mentor watching the match. King 2 finishes the match with a win and hoists his belt, but Armor King is nowhere to be seen. King 2 drops the belt and rushes to his locker room. Since he had performed admirably in the match, he finds his master sitting weakened by his heart disease, reminiscing about the first King.
Next up in Tekken 4, after the events of the King of Iron Fist Tournament 3, King discovered that his master Armor King had been killed in a bar brawl. King swore revenge and learned that the perpetrator, Craig Marduk, was serving time in an Arizona state penitentiary. Upon Marduk's release, thanks to bribes paid by King himself from his pro wrestling business, King sent a plane ticket and article about the King of Iron Fist Tournament 4 to him. King waited for Marduk at the tournament, and in the ending description for the game, King donated the vast fortune of the Mishima Zaibatsu to help the impoverished children of the world. Meanwhile, Marduk had been hospitalized after his loss to King. King goes to the hospital to seek vengeance, ready to deliver a final blow after reaching him. He stops after seeing a portrait of Marduk with his elderly parents on a medical tray next to his bed. Thinking about the pain of his own loss, King puts the photo on Marduk's chest and leaves, sparing him, having realized that revenge is not the answer.
So in Tekken 5, after the events of Tekken 4, Marduk had donned a Black Jaguar mask and challenged King to a rematch via television. Enraged by the assault on his master's honor, King resolved to settle the score in the King of Iron Fist Tournament 5. In his fourth match in the tournament, he fought Julia Chang. Julia told King to stop fighting just because Marduk called him out. King refused to allow such disgrace to his master, and Julia had to stop King by herself. However, King was the victor in the match and was given even more fuel to beat Marduk. 2 wins after this, he had the chance to fight. Marduk adamantly stated that he would beat King fair and square. Once again, however, King won. Marduk conceded defeat and King offered his hand in friendship, reconciling the differences between the two. In the ending, King is being beaten by a tag team combo of 2 wrestlers. He retreats to his corner with his arm outstretched, only for Marduk to slap it and tag himself in. Marduk then makes quick work of the two, giving enough time for King to recuperate. They then finish the duo together with respective aerial finishing moves, King using the Muscle Buster, which is a sick move. King and Marduk hoist their NWN Championship belts, finishing the cinematic.
In Tekken 6, at the end of the previous tournament, King caught wind of an attack upon Marduk. He was furious to learn that the assailant looked exactly like his deceased master, Armor King. King was determined to learn the true identity of Craig's attacker, but was unsuccessful in his attempt. With the world engulfed in war, King had all but given up looking for Marduk's attacker when he received an invitation from Marduk to join him in the King of Iron Fist Tournament 6, in the hopes that the culprit would appear here again. King accepted, hoping that this would come true. In the ending description, King is in his room looking at a picture of his deceased master. He carefully tries to put the picture back on the shelf, but accidentally bumps it against the sill. The frame drops to the floor and the glass covering breaks. Looking at the frame, King notices another photo behind his master's. The hidden photo showed 2 Armor King. King looked on, shocked. In conjunction with Marduk and Armor King's ending, the assailant is sitting in a room staring at the same picture King finds hidden. He then stands up and walks away. The scene shifts to Marduk digging up Armor King's grave, only to find that he is indeed dead. Marduk abruptly stands up and asks who the assailant was, as he happens to be standing right behind him. King arrives at the graveyard to join the two, asking the assailant who exactly he is. The attacker asserts that he is Armor King and no one else. Marduk deems this stupid as he had just seen his body, plus he had killed him with his own hands. The mysterious person then says that he was the brother of Armor King, thus making himself Armor King 2. Armor King then says he would not forgive Marduk for dealing the finishing blow to his brother, as Armor King 1 had a cardiac problem as well. Getting confusing now.
It's turning into like a soap opera. Alright, in Tekken 7, King's rival in this game is kind of randomly Jack. King is not only a masked professional wrestler, but also the proud owner of an orphanage. Recently, King's sworn friend and comrade Craig Marduk, as well as the brother of his late master Armor King 2, both engaged in a bloody fight which left him with critical injuries. King desperately wanted to come to his friend's rescue, but knew that their operations wouldn't come cheap. At the same time, King's orphanage was in constant danger owing to the war that was raging between the G Corporation and the Mishima Zaibatsu. Himself caught between a rock and a hard place, King entered the King of Iron Fist Tournament 7 with his eyes set firmly on the cash prize.
Later, by the time Marduk had recovered before Armor King did, just as he was about to finish him, King stopped him from doing so, reminding him the day that King redeemed him. The friendship they forged means they can still make peace with Armor King 2, Marduk's murderous intent being the same mistake King had done with the formerly injured Vale Tudo fighter back after the end of the 4th tournament. To avoid bloodshed, King suggested Marduk write Armor King 2 a letter challenging him to a retirement match, where the loser would have to stop fighting for good, and the latter accepted. And in the ending description, Jack 7 is seemingly defeated, but he gets back up and tells King that all of his moves have now been analyzed, to which King is shocked. King tries to attack Jack 7, but he is unable to touch the machine. Then, King has an idea on how to defeat the robot. He then proceeds to enter Marduk's ready position, tackle Jack 7, and performs the Melon Masher. While Jack is able to knock King back, King retaliates with Armor King's round out elbow, which finally defeats Jack 7 and leads him to becoming victorious.
So, in terms of his other appearances, he's been a playable character in Tekken Tag Tournament, in Namco across Capcom, where he teams up with Felicia from Capcom's Darkstalkers series. Humorously, Felicia seems to think he's a feline being just like herself, despite his numerous attempts to explain he wears a mask. He was also in Street Fighter Cross Tekken, where his partner is Craig Marduk, Tekken Tag Tournament 2 as well, and on Tekken Mobile.
And as we talked about before, in terms of gameplay, King 2 is pretty much exactly the same as King 1, so I'm not going to go all the way through this. Obviously, he uses the wrestling style. He uses like the luchador style in pro wrestling, along with Armor King. However, as we said, he uses the catch variation, so he's all about holds and submissions. So I won't go fully into all of the moves again, because we sort of tackled that part already. But in terms of character relationships here, obviously King 1 was his predecessor, Armor King 1 was his mentor, Ogre is his enemy, as he killed King 1, who was his predecessor. Craig Marduk was formerly his enemy in Tekken 4 and the first half of Tekken 5, but the two eventually set aside their differences and became best friends. King also acts as Marduk's wingman to keep the latter's public image safe, such as reminding him when King redeemed him back in the end of Tekken 5, in order to avoid bloodshed between Marduk and the younger Armor King. He is the one to suggest for Marduk to ask for a retirement match in Tekken 7. Marduk is also his partner in Street Fighter X Tekken, as we said. His relationship to Armor King 2 is that Armor King 2 despises King 2 for forgiving Marduk, the man who murdered the older Armor King. Despite this, King still tries to befriend him and make peace. To avoid any bloodshed between Marduk and Armor King 2's endless grudges, it was King's suggestion to Marduk to schedule the retirement match. Julia Chang showed concern to King while he was going after Marduk in Tekken 5, and attempted to dissuade him by saying he's strong enough and shouldn't let Marduk's taunts get to him.
Yep, there's also obviously Jack 7, his opponent in Tekken 7. There's with Jin Kazama in Namco across Capcom. They do ally together along with some other characters to stop the oncoming threat, and King helps Jin defeat his father's devil form, which is a non-canon appearance, and then also Felicia from that Namco across Capcom, which is non-canon too. Some trivia on King 2, I guess some of it would obviously be the same as the original King, but he still doesn't speak. Instead growls like a jaguar. These growls are translated into speech via some subtitles, and the people he interacts with understand what he says. Some of those subtitles are pretty hilarious too, so I definitely recommend going back and having a look. Same sort of grapples and moves on the most part. There's a couple of added ones here. So there's one of King's victory poses, show him sidestepping in a manner that's displayed by Rey Mysterio, who's obviously a well-known wrestler from WCW, WWE, and I think he was in a Mexican one as well. I think it was CLL, I think it was called, or whatever it was, CMLL. And then King is also seen in the Tekken 5 opening video performing a 619 after being thrown across the wrestling ring by Marduk in order to prevent a collision with the outside of the ring. The 619 is actually Mysterio's trademark move. Furthermore, King and Rey Mysterio are both masked Mexican wrestlers, although Rey Mysterio technically was born in America, but whatever, who carry on the tradition from their predecessors, also named King and Rey Mysterio respectively. For a further similarity, Rey Mysterio means the King of Mystery in Spanish. Also, the 619 was known throughout Japan as Tiger Feint Kick, made famous by Tiger Mask 2.
According to Alyssa's journal, in the scenario campaign, King is not easily classified as human, which sort of, I guess, is just a funny nod to the fact that he's sort of mistaken for an actual, like, jaguar-headed creature, especially with the growling and such. King's Tekken 3 theme can be heard in Sebastian's Tekken Tag Tournament 2 ending when he changes the radio channel for the first time. King 2's customization items in Tekken 5 and 6 allowed part of his face to be shown, revealing just his mouth. Interestingly, King, despite having his Jaguar mask removed and having his mouth exposed, still makes the Jaguar sounds rather than human sounds. Additionally, his mouth never moves whilst he makes these sounds. Unlike his predecessor, King 1, who had dark skin, King 2's skin color is a lighter shade of brown, obviously just denoting that it is a different person.
Yeah. In Tekken 3, in the console opening, King 2 is momentarily seen not wearing his mask, like his predecessor in both Tekken and Tekken 2, while being strenuously trained by Armor King 1. His real face, however, is not seen. In his ending, he performs Heihachi's powerbomb to his wrestling opponent before running after his master, Armor King 1. In one of his Tekken 3 outfits, King 2 wears a blue t-shirt showing his hatred of the Mishima Zaibatsu. The t-shirt reads, Mishima Heavy Industries and Evil.
This is the only game that shows King 2... this is on to Tekken 4 now. This is the only game that shows King 2 with long hair and a turquoise Jaguar designed speedos, knee pads and his former boots. A similarly designed outfit was also worn in the Namco X Capcom game. He has the only ending cinematic with no dialogue at all. It is also possible to customize King 2 to have full Jaguar attributes, but only in Dark Resurrection. And King's sub-bosses are Julia Chang and Craig Murdoch.
Yep, so in Tekken 6, King's growls in this game are entirely new and a bit more realistic. King has many of Tajiri, who's another wrestler's moves, including the running powerbomb, the enzigiri, rolling leg splits, rolling armbar, Boston Crab, surfboard, standing moonsault, powerbomb, octopus hold, which is a sick move, a multi-strike combo, giant swing, spinning heel kick, suplex, and brainbuster.
On to Tekken 7. In a break from tradition, King's wrestling tights now consist of yellow trunks over light blue. In his ending, King 2 utilizes both Marduk's Melon Masher and Armor King 2's Round Out Elbow to defeat Jack 7, as said before. This is used by him in tribute to both of them. In the PlayStation 4 version of the game, he can use King 1's signature Tekken 2 Player 2 outfit.
That's cool.
Which is cool as. King also has an outfit that was released as a collaboration between Tekken and New Japan World Wrestling, Pro Wrestling, based on the wrestler Kazuchika Okada, which I think everybody knows at this point. If you equip the outfit, it actually alters King's rage art so that his finisher is now Okada's Rainmaker.
It's so sick.
And not only does it change the animation, but the side, when you do the move normally, it ends up reversing the side that you're on. But I think if you use the Rainmaker finisher with this outfit, you stay on the same side of the screen. So if it doesn't finish them off, it's actually kind of helpful to not switch up.
Is badass as well. This was right at the peak of like Okada's like NJPW championship run. There's the as the IWGP heavyweight champion, and I remember like I was watching New Japan like at some of the main events there as well, and just even like you getting goosebumps with the music and the Japanese like ringing out, so being the Rainmaker, Okada, Kazuchika, the way he does it is so sick. That was badass.
Also on one of the maps, I can't remember what the map's called, but it's like the actual Iron Fist like tournament map, like the official one. On the floor, which is like a wrestling ring, it has like New Japan logos and stuff on it, which is really cool. That's
pretty cool. I like that. So in Tekken Mobile, King 2 is the hardest to be defeated. in 1 to 4 stars in every event he appears in, due to his grappling techniques from his Waza cards being more damaging towards the player. King's rivals in Tekken card challenge are Gunjack, Paul Phoenix, and Lady Long. King's clothing is available as DLC character creation parts
King
and soul
bears
palettes.
a resemblance to Guin from the anime Guin Saga, as well as Jaguar Javier from Guacamelee.
Javier. But
Javier.
Guacamele, that's cool.
That's pretty funny. In Tekken Blood Vengeance, King's dossier is briefly seen when Anna Williams opens a file containing dossiers of various persons of interest. And King was also one of the characters in the now shut down freemium browser-based dating sim, Namco High. That sounds great.
That's quality. Well, that's pretty much everything on King, and that's, I guess, to kick off our playlist for Tekken Lore. And King being one of our favorite characters, both to play as, but also a backstory. So we hope that we did him enough justice. We probably will be touching back on him when we do other videos, particularly on like Armor King and stuff. But that's it, what we've got for King for now.
Yeah, and definitely, since it's the start of a new sort of lore series, just let us know if you enjoyed it and what characters you might like to see, and we'll definitely get round to talking about them in the future.
Yeah!